do believe that the highest work that anyone can do is that of volunteering, and it's important that writers volunteer and do community work. In the past, I did poetry in the schools and did volunteer work at art centers in Chicago and did workshops with other writers and created multicultural arts events when I lived in Chicago. And then when I came here, I had to earn my own money, and money was tight for a while, but I always had in my mind, if I could have enough money to pay my rent, I would like to create a workshop where I taught for free. And that was something I dreamed about. And it began in 1990. In the beginning of the 1990s, I was able to see that dream come true through a writer's workshop that I started teaching in my dining room. And eventually that workshop would become a non-for-profit, and it became my foundation, which is the Macondo Foundation. And what the Macondo Foundation does is it brings together writers that work in underserved communities, writers that come from communities that are not normally represented in books, and we bring together those writers to help encourage and foster their finishing books, and to also share our expertise with each other. Sometimes we offer residencies, sometimes we do community work together, and we do readings. At this time in my life, in my 50s, I want to focus on helping other writers to become successful writers and to be part of a family of writers that are involved in and believe in serving these underserved communities. I think it's especially important for me to be concerned about education, considering that I live in a town where we rank number 64 in literacy, and it's a town that has a 25% illiteracy rate, where we have huge, more than half of our young Latinos drop out of high school. To me, I'm concerned that the young people are not seeing themselves in the books that they read. They're not reading about their history so that they have a sense of pride of who they are. It's very important that Latinos read about their history and know who they are so that they can take some pride and dream beyond just minimum wage. I also am concerned about the high teen pregnancy rate. It's connected to low self-esteem, and it's connected as well to young women not having enough information about their own fertility. So I'm a big advocate of Planned Parenthood. I think if the schools and parents can't talk to their children, that children are going to get information from other sources. So wouldn't you rather that they had information that would prevent pregnancy, not prevent promiscuity, because that's not going to happen if you are close to your children, but that will enable them to know what their function of their body is. If you leave young women in the dark, they're going to find it through Hollywood or through maybe some television personality, as opposed to coming from adults that are responsible and want the best for your children. So I'm a big advocate of young women knowing their bodies. I think that our culture doesn't address the issue of pregnant teens until it's too late. You know, you see all kinds of agencies and facilities and things for young unwed mothers, but they really should be putting that money into education when they're much younger. If young women have a high sense of self-esteem, then they don't need that approval of boyfriends that young in their life. They would love themselves enough to say, hey, you know what? I've got a dream, and it's beyond pushing a baby carriage or a wedding dress. I've got something bigger, and I want to live my life and do that later on when I'm older, but first I got to take care of me. And unfortunately, the models that young women have through telenovelas and film and media, doesn't allow them to think outside the box. And I want young women to think outside the box and think of wonderful things that they could do, like run for president or own a bank or create their own publishing company. Those possibilities aren't open to those young girls. When I moved into my house, it was painted a very nice color, but it wasn't my color. It looked like it was made out of flan, you know, kind of cream and beige. It was pretty, but I couldn't wait to paint it. And I have to explain, I live in a historic neighborhood, so there are certain bylaws you agree to when you live in a historic neighborhood. I thought when I selected a violet color for my house that it would be something that everyone would like, because I live in a place where the light is very much like the light in Mexico, and the violet color house is not unusual to Mexican homes. If you look at the works of famous Mexican architects, they have borrowed from the colors of little communities, little towns in Mexico into public structures like library. Even our library here is done by a Mexican architect borrowing Mexican colors. So I didn't intentionally mean to stir things up when I painted my house a periwinkle violet. I thought I was making it happy and something that looked like it was from this part of the world because of the light. And as it turns out, I opened up a can of worms. But it was an important can of worms to open, because in the course of doing my investigation in order to make my house legal with the Historic Review Commission, I found that the city of San Antonio, even though it had bylaws that were purported to preserve the history of all cultures, didn't preserve Mexican culture. It preserved the architectural history of the Spaniards, and it preserved the architectural taste of the people in positions of money and power, which is the same thing in American culture. But it did not preserve Mexican architecture, including Mexican colors, unless they were authorized by an architect for the Riverwalk or a museum, but not for the homes themselves. This was an oversight that I brought to their attention, and subsequently the color of the people on the Historic Review Board changed, both in their flesh and in their mind. And it's a wonderful thing that's happened, because suddenly, you know, an oversight was made aware, and now we see more houses of color and people of color on that board. And it made people aware of how colonized they were when we talk about historic preservation in a town named San Antonio. So that irony was not one that everyone wanted to hear. It got a lot of national attention. It was not one that I wanted to get into because I was writing my novel, but subsequently it has allowed other historic communities around the globe to become aware of the native people and their cultural heritage as being authentic and historically legitimate. So even though it cost me a lot of time, I'm very glad that I opened that can of worms, even if it was by accident or by la divina providencia.